In this video, I'm going to show you how to make your lessons never boring and always keep your students' attention. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Keith. I'm the founder and CEO of That Bio Tutor. And welcome back to another Diary of a Tutor episode. I think I'm going to change my YouTube channel from Tuition Launch to Diary of a Tutor, modeling after Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO YouTube channel. So you see, students, right, when they don't pay attention, I never thought of them as naughty. I never thought of the students were being the problem. Whenever I saw them, their eyes were like no longer looking at me but looking at something else, looking down, maybe sometimes at their phone, although most of them don't do that in my class, or talking. I never thought that it's their fault, they're just not serious, I need to scold them. No, I've always put the blame and responsibility on me, that I was not interesting enough. And that's actually, I think, the start of the solution. To realize you're simply not interesting enough and that you are boring. And I can prove it, because these so-called naughty students, these so-called ADHD students, they can watch for hours Netflix shows. They can binge movies, Netflix, games, and pay attention for hours without even moving from their seat. So look at their incredible ability to focus. They can, it's just they don't want to. Because Netflix is interesting, YouTube is interesting, games are interesting, but you are not interesting. So that's the hard truth, that you are simply not as interesting as those things. Now you might say, but of course, this is a subject, this is school, this is studying. Tuition is about teaching serious stuff, how could it be that interesting? The answer is it can. If you've ever watched Vsauce, YouTube channel, ever watched anything that was educational yet entertaining? If yes, then it is possible. So you have no excuse. So how do we catch their attention? I'm going to give you as many strategies as I can think of. I have my notes also down there as to how to catch their attention. So the first and most important trick or strategy or tactic or hack is tell stories. So when you tell stories, everyone goes quiet. We have this natural human instinct to just like, oh, someone's telling a story, I want to find out the end, I want to find out more. So telling stories taps into this base human instinct to want to find out what goes on. And that's why movies, Netflix work so well, because it's all about stories. And at the end, they hook you with a cliffhanger so that you want to know how the story continues. So tell stories. And actually at the start of the class, right, when everyone hasn't settled down yet because they're still noisy, they're still talking, I always start my class, almost always, with a story. And this story is usually related to bio experiments. So I give you one such example, okay? Today, I just had a lesson, and the story I told was of pine procession. So these caterpillars follow behind one another, behind their butts. And they're called pine procession because pine trees, they like pine leaves. And they form a procession, a line, right? And they walk like that. So there was an experiment where they put on a flower pot a ring of these caterpillars on the lid, which is a circle, right? And in the middle of the flower pot, they put their favorite food, pine leaves. And so these caterpillars, they start walking because they're following behind the butt of the next caterpillar, right? And they just keep walking in circles because that's how they're programmed. That's their natural instinct. And for weeks, they walk in circles, doing nothing, going nowhere, until they faint of exhaustion. Even though their favorite food, what they wanted most, was right in the middle of their flower pot. And so what's the moral of the story, right? That sometimes humans, we act like those caterpillars. We just follow what society tells us to do. We just follow what other people do. And we don't question, are we doing the right thing? Is this getting me to my goals? We just do it. And at the end of our life, we die exhausted, not having achieved what we wanted most, when it was right there for the taking if we just had stepped out of line for a while. So now that story, after I told it at the start, it grabs everyone's attention. It's quiet and it's like right primed for teaching, like everyone's attention is there already. So that's my strategy, my opening strategy at the start of class. You can also use this in between breaks. So after the break is over, everyone comes back, they're still rowdy. You can grab their attention quickly by giving a story. And you see these stories, for me, it's related to bio, right? So I like telling them. But if it's not related to your subject, it doesn't matter. You can just tell a personal story. And in fact, those are the most juicy stories that they want to hear. They want to know more about you. Your students want to have a personal connection with you. Yes, believe it or not, they want to know more about you. So tell them, right? Give them the chance. Tell them. Personal stories, if you can try and relate it to the lesson, that'll be good. But if you can't, just say, okay, so before we continue with the lesson, I want to tell you all a personal story, or I want to tell you all a story, right? And they will want to listen. As long as they like you to some degree, they will want to listen. And even if they're a completely new student, in fact, especially if they're a completely new student, that's when you want to tell them the stories, because then, as a trial student, they will connect with you. They will start having a relationship, they'll start feeling personal with you. And that's the perfect chance to convert them into a paying student. Because once they start feeling the relationship, they feel comfortable with you, they feel like they know, like, and trust you, then higher chance that they will actually join and be your student. So tell personal stories. It unveils mystery. But here's the thing, right? Here's the catch. Don't unveil too much mystery. So I learned this actually from some random commentary YouTube video about some controversial influencer, which I'm not going to name, but she's quite promiscuous, and like there was lots of simps going after this person, and this person was making loads of money. So then this person had a massive downfall because she went on podcast and started, like, you know, just spilling all the secrets. Like, they ask questions, she just tells everything, and then all the mystery about this person was gone. And so while I do not agree or promote such kind of people or what they do, but the lesson can be taken, which was, do not unveil all mystery at once. Do it slowly, and always give the sense that there is more to you, that there is a greater depth that they have still not uncovered. And that leaves a continual story to be untold, to be unfolded. And that's just like how the Netflix movies do it, right? They always have, Netflix shows always have an extra bit of the plot that is being unfolded every step of the way. But you still don't know the full thing. And so that's how we want it to be like for the students. Next thing about how to catch their attention is warnings. So there was this question that I did recently with my students, and at the start, before we went through that question, I told them, hey, by the way, last year I did this question with my students, just like you guys, at the same time of the year. And guess what? There was this one student who, she had the same exact question come out in her prelim exam, but she got it all wrong because she didn't pay attention. So don't be like her. You better pay attention. It might come out in your exam, because prelim papers, they like to copy from other schools. They like to copy from past year papers. So there is a high chance it will come out. And after I said that, I got everyone's attention. When I started explaining the question, you know, it was way more quiet, people were focused and all that. So warnings work. Because honestly, we respond more to fear than to rewards. And society is very fear-based, fear-conditioned. Parents are always telling their children, don't do this, don't do that. If not, you'll be punished. If not, or else. School teachers are saying you better study, or else you'll fail, you'll be a failure in life, etc. Right? So I don't like to add on to that, but just be aware that warnings are fear-based, and since they be conditioned with fear so much of their lives, it likely will be quite effective. So warnings. And also you can do success stories. So I don't personally use this that much, but I can see why it would be great as well. So success stories, like I had this student who, she hated studying bio. She always would study as the last subject because she doesn't want to do it, right? But after she joined our class, after some time, her prelim, she actually got A1. She went from C6 to A1. Now, granted that A1 was a bit overinflated because the prelim exams were super easy and marked very lenient for her school, which is strange, I don't know why. But after that, I noticed that she was asking me a lot of questions on WhatsApp, like by herself. And she used to not want to study bio, right? She used to procrastinate and only put it at the end. But why is she asking out of her own volition now? Because she likes the subject now. Because she noticed that she can do it, she can improve, she's smart, she's capable, and she likes the subject now. So that's a success story, right? And I don't exactly know why I don't say more of these. Maybe because I'm afraid that it sounds like I'm giving so much propaganda about our classes. Yeah, I'll think about it. Like, when appropriate, I will give more of these success stories. So next thing, is use relatable analogies. I've said this in my other videos and I will say it again because it's just so good. Use relatable analogies to explain bio concepts. It's way better than just dry, okay, not just for bio, oops, camera died. But not just for bio, but for other subjects. Now for bio and sciences, I guess we have an easier time using this tactic. Math, I'm not sure how, I'm sorry, but analogies are just fantastic because they are like kind of like a story, and people are also interested to see how does the analogy work, how does it correspond to the concept you're teaching. People are inherently interested to see the links, right, to see how it works. So I'll give you an example. Today I thought about the eye, right, and an analogy I gave was that the suspensory ligaments of the eye are like ropes, and you can pull a rope tight and then you can let go, but a rope cannot contract and relax. Like muscles are like rubber bands, you can pull them and then they increase in length and then they come back shorter length, right? But ropes, you can't do that. So this is a very small example of an analogy to explain concepts, and people like this stuff because it's relatable, it's real life, you know. Whenever it's abstract and far away from our lives, it's boring. So I know this firsthand because for my whole life I used to attend this church, and the church's sermons are very good in the sense that it's very accurate to the Bible, but it's very bad in the sense that it's so far removed from your life and your reality, you can't see how it links, it's relevant, or how does it apply to you. And so you're like, why should I care? There's always this question in your head, right? Why should I care about the information I'm receiving? And so for most people, the answer is I don't, because I don't see how it applies. And so most people are bored, most people are not paying attention, and most people are like sleeping, and I also felt like sleeping all the time in those sermons. But now I've moved to a new church and they focus on linking it to your life. And so I'm like, oh wow, I see why that piece of, or that verse in the Bible actually makes sense and applies to me. And so I'm going to change my life because of that. And so that's what we want the students to also feel, that it does matter to me, it does apply to me, and the best way to do that is just link it to their daily life. So the more links you can have to their daily life, the more interesting. So example, just now, one of the things that I thought was a way to reduce the spread of infectious diseases is covering nose and mouth when we cough or sneeze. So why not just cover mouth? Or why not just cover nose? Because if you cover nose, it'll all come out through your mouth, right? If you cover your mouth, you're like, and then everything comes out through your nose, right? So I did this, and a few people laughed. Why? Because they probably can relate. They can relate to the experience of having covered their mouth before and stuff came out their nose, right? They probably can relate. I think that's why they laughed. So the more relatable it is to real life, the better. Okay, there are even more tactics. So ask questions and pose it to the class. Whenever I notice that people are zoning out or they're getting bored because I'm giving statement after statement, content after content, then they're starting to like look elsewhere or maybe even start talking, then I ask question. So instead of giving statements after statement for the content, for example, I say this part is the DNA of the bacteria. Boring. Then I changed it to this part of the bacteria, what do y'all think it is? Then everyone looks up because there's a question asked. Even though I never directed it at any person, but the human mind cannot help but answer questions. So when you hear that, what part of the bacteria do you think this is? Even if they don't want to answer me and they hate me for some reason, they will have no choice but to think of the answer in their head. I don't know exactly how this works, but yeah. For example, let me test it with you right now. What color is my hair? I bet you looked at the screen at my hair, and I bet you thought black. Even though it's kind of silly because I can't hear whatever you're gonna say, right? But you still answered that question in your head. So that is how to hijack people's attention. You ask questions and then you answer them by yourself instead of giving statement after statement. So when you notice people getting bored, just change it up from statement to question and then answer your own questions. Now, what if there are noisy kids? right? Some people talking. Now, that's usually quite annoying and it annoys other people. So here's a simple tactic. Just go ask that noisy person, like, hey, what's the answer to this? Like, so you ask a question to the class and then you ask that person to be the volunteer to answer. Okay, so I also do target people. Like, I try and engage everyone. So try and ask everyone at least one question in the whole lesson. And so while I'm doing that targeting, if I notice some noisy people, I usually target them. And that instantly makes them focus and stop talking because they have to answer a question, so they have to think now. And so that's a really simple hack for noisy people. Very good classroom management hack. Still, there's more. I throw snacks, rewards. Okay, what are the snacks? Actually, it's behind me. So I have small biscuits, I have small Kit Kat, M&M, gummy bears, I have sweets, lots of different types of sweets, high chew, and Mentos, so on. Okay, so all these snacks, right, I throw to them when they answer correctly. So why is this interesting? Because now there's actually a reward, right? If you answer correctly, you earn something. So the other students, when they see it, they'll be like, hey, I also won. So they will try to answer the question, okay? And they won't all be just quiet. You actually incentivize them to answer. And yes, it's kind of treating them like dogs, I know, but it works. And humans like it, right? So we all like being able to win something and earn something. And I also prioritize the snacks differently. Like, if you answer the difficult question, I give you a bigger one, so that further incentivizes people to try and to guess. And I always tell them this, like, hey, if you get it wrong, I won't take away your snack, right? I will, you don't actually lose anything. But if you give an educated guess and you get it right, you do win something. So I believe, because I implement this, I have higher rates of people answering questions and more daringly, even if they get it wrong, right? I think this is a significant factor because they know that they could earn something. And even when they do get it wrong, I usually try and guide them towards the answer. And I guiding them, okay, this is going to be another video, but guiding them to the answer is a nuanced process. You can't just make it so obviously easy, because then everyone will be like, oh, you're just giving them the answer. And that student will feel belittled by you because you are basically insulting their intelligence, right? That, oh, you're so dumb, I have to give you such a big hint. So instead we give small hints, and then we increase the size of the hints as we notice that, okay, the person's really lost and doesn't know the content here. I need to give bigger and bigger hints. And if you realize that, okay, it's just they don't know at all, so waiting for them is just wasting everyone's time. So whenever I see that look and I notice that, okay, they really just don't know the content at all, they can't answer even if I give hints, then I'll usually change person. I'll say, usually person beside them, and I'll say, especially if they're a friend, right? They'll say, I'll tell them, oh, by the way, your friend also can help you. Then now they'll discuss, and then they'll say the answer. Usually the friend knows the answer. Or I will just look around the class, see, oh, that person is looking at me with the eyes of like they know the answer. So then I'll say, okay, you want help? Then usually they'll not. Then I say, okay, you help. Yeah. So, or even if they don't, even if I don't say you want help, I'll just say, oh, let's have this one help you. Yeah, something like that. And always say it in a way that doesn't make them feel dumb, because if not, they're never going to answer questions again, right? So yeah, rewards, answering questions, this is a big way to get people's attention, make them feel engaged and involved in the lesson. And they won't be bored, because they're actually the center of attention. Like, as a student, I'm sure you remember, maybe you don't, but we're always very self-conscious as a student, and we feel like the center of attention of the whole class when we are talking, right? When we are asking a question, we feel like center of attention. When we are answering a question, we also do that. We also feel like that, even though no one really cares, but that's how it feels as a student, right? So imagine that self-consciousness, imagine that spotlight effect on the student. Their brain is on fire. They are feeling like, wow, they are really engaged at that point when they are being asked a question, when they're answering a question, or they're asking a question. They're gonna feel like that. So that's why it works. That's why it makes them feel involved. Alright, next. I also hold Kahoots every 2 lessons, and that is a big part of the engagement because everyone's involved in the Kahoot and everyone is excited during the thing. There's competition, there's prizes to win also, and I always tell them at the start when there is a Kahoot, okay, I actually forgot about it today, so I should have told them. I tell them, hey, there's Kahoot at the end, by the way, so tell your teammates, especially when it's noisy, I'll say, tell your teammate like pay attention because we want to win the prize, right, at the end. Okay, countdowns. So whenever you feel like it's noisy, do a countdown. So say, okay, we'll do the next question in 5, 4, 3, 2, or like 3, 2, 1, that kind of thing. And during the Kahoots, after the answers revealed, especially if it's a bigger class, they will all make a lot of noise. And they'll whine to their teammate like, no, it's wrong or whatever. And then I'll be like, okay, I'll give you 5 more seconds to whine to your teammate, and then they'll laugh about that also. And then yeah, after 5 seconds, they have the expectation that we're going to continue. So they stop talking so much. Okay, during breaks, here's what I do. I play music. Okay, so the music becomes a conditioning for when it is okay to talk. So during breaks, okay to talk, I play music. Then when I turn off the music, their brain clicks to like, oh, it's back to the lesson mode. And then they become less talkative. So those are my tips. There are many small ones, but I hope you learn something that you can implement into your class. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then in the comments, tell me which one, at least one, are you going to implement into your class to make your students feel like it's less boring. Because honestly, if you can't even win the attention game, if you can't even get them to listen, how are you going to benefit them? How is anything going into their head? How will the results show of your good teaching if they don't even accept your teaching because they're not even listening to anything you are saying? You can't make any difference, any impact. You can't help them at all. And in fact, don't you feel bad that you are taking their money but not helping them? So if I were you, I would care a lot about making sure I am interesting and that I am as interesting as a Netflix show, maybe not as interesting, but interesting enough that they would pay attention for most of the lesson so that they get a lot of the benefit. That's what matters, to be interesting enough. And now that doesn't mean joking all the time, but one of my students made me realize this recently. Being entertaining is part of helping them get good grades. Why? Because when you're entertaining and funny and you're relatable, then they would actually pay attention, take in the information, right? And they would remember. It'll be more memorable. So they pay attention, they remember it better. Don't you think that has a higher chance of actually being used in their exams? Well, yes, it will. And because of that, then you actually benefit their grades. So I give you one example that I used in my recent class. I taught them when bright light is shining into your eye, torchlight, okay? The iris muscles are the one responsible for controlling the pupil size. So we make the pupil constrict and shrink because we don't want so much light to come into our eye, right? So what does this changing of pupil size is something called the iris. And for non-bio folk, you know how eye color is black? Some people have blue eyes, green eyes. The eye color is the iris color. And in the center of the iris, there's the pupil. Okay, so this constrict and dilate, this pupil changing, the iris has 2 types of muscles, radial and circular muscles. And they need to remember which does what. So during bright light, like a torchlight shines into my eye, what do radial muscles do? Contract or relax? So a memory hack that I teach them is, well, radial muscles, think of them like they're scared of the dark. So when it's off the light, they'll tense up in fear, right? So they'll contract when it's dark. But when you turn on the light, they'll be like, oh, phew, and then they'll relax. So bright light in your eye, they'll be like, phew, right? So they'll relax. So relatable analogy, memory hack, some comedic effect there as well with the way I said it. Very memorable. And later on in the Kahoot, when there was that question, almost everyone got it correct. So it just proves that entertainment is key to getting them to listen, and it is key for memorizing as well. And it is key for actually improving their grades. It does positively impact their grades. And here's one more way to make that even more powerful. So you remember at the start I mentioned telling stories, especially personal stories, right? Because it's like you're spilling the tea, you're unveiling the mystery about you and creating deeper personal connection. So for that point, after I said that, I also told them a story about myself. I said that up to like about 2 years ago, I used to be scared of the dark. Yeah, as a 20-year-old guy, I used to be scared of the dark. And why? Because my room is super black. Like I make it pitch black when I sleep so that I can have very good sleep. And so I used to be scared of dark because like in the bed I feel okay, but if I would be sitting in my chair and it's completely dark, or lying on my floor when I'm doing stretching, I would feel scared. And so I was being vulnerable with them, and they were also like surprised, right? And entertained at the same time. Then I told them, here's how I solved it. So I opened the door, but very slightly, so there's a bit of light coming in. Then I would sit in the chair, I would do my stretching and so on. Then I slowly closed the door more and more until it was completely black, and then I got adjusted to it. And I also mentioned that, hey, you know, if you feel that way, scared of dark, you're not alone, because it's a very biological thing. That in the dark, it makes sense to be scared, because what if there's something you might trip? What if there's a sharp thing that you must step on? What if there's a tiger that's gonna kill you, right? A predator. So in the dark, it makes sense that we are scared of the dark. So it is common fear, but it can be overcome by adjusting to it. So see, I've paired that with now a personal story. Okay, the chance they're gonna remember about radial muscles are scared of the dark has gone sky high. Because during the thing, they were entertained, they were listening and all that. And yeah, the chance that they actually use it in their exams and they remember that is pretty high. So that's how to be entertaining, that's how to be engaging, as far as I have learned from the past 3 years of tutoring. So I hope that was helpful, and subscribe if it was. See you in the next video.